Good morning, everybody, or good evening, or good night, or wherever you are, wherever you're listening. What is up? My name is ANITA Bass, and welcome back to my podcast, which is, of course, sponsored by Wake Tours, the greatest music festival. Oh my God. The greatest music festival traveling company in the world. You. All right. So today we are going to be talking about the concept and what it's like to move countries, states, traveling abroad, and all the things that aren't spoken about. So, of course, as you know from all the podcasts and from me, that I'm advocate for just packing up your bags and going wherever and doing whatever and experiencing and learning lessons and meeting people and putting yourself in weird situations just because you learn, because why not? That is what I'm about. So don't take this as me scaring you off. No matter what I've been through and no matter what I've done, I would never regret anything, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Like if the borders opened, I would move to Vietnam for a few months just because why not, right? So definitely not saying don't do this. Do it. It's awesome. So today I'll talk for literally only a couple minutes and then we're going to get Jolene on the phone. So basically I have moved away from home and tried to live in another place 3 times. First in Toronto in Canada and then the next 2 times in Melbourne in Australia. The first 2 times Canada, I was 20 and I moved there with someone. We'd planned to move there like a bit longer term, but honestly, I was just so young and ignorant that it was just like, it was an adventure. And then the next time in Melbourne, I had just gotten back from a touring circuit. So it was September and I needed to get a part-time job in Perth and I had made some friends from Melbourne. So I was like, fuck it, my suitcase is packed. And I just got on a plane 2 days later and was like, let's just roll with it. And then the third time I went to Melbourne was when I had the debt from an event we ran, Nocturnal Neverland, Wide Awake, purposely put myself into debt, then racked up another credit card on that. I found the papers the other day. The total figure is $36,000 at the age of 23. What the fuck was I thinking? But yeah, and I was like, if I have that debt in Perth, that's going to take me like 17 years to pay off. I'm going to Melbourne. There's more jobs. I'm doing my thing. So that was the third time. So moving countries, moving states is so exciting and everyone throw you a going away party and it's just amazing and oh my God, you're so lucky and everyone just sees the highlights. But it is actually one of the most stressful, hectic, lonely, self-learning times, especially if you just try and wing it, which I did every time. Not having a job set up, not having a place set up, just getting on a plane and hoping for the best. So I guess when you move, you don't really think about all the things that you have in place. People are like, oh, you'll miss your friends. But it's just the little things, like even knowing where you are or knowing the people or the types of people. Or even if you don't see your family for like 8 months, there's something about knowing that you can just get in a car and see them, which is comforting, but you don't realize until you have that taken away from you. So first up was like the job aspect. It is hectic and heartbreaking and true character building when it comes to getting a job, especially when I moved to Canada. I went there and I was just like, hounding the pavement, trying to hustle. And no, I wasn't a drug dealer. I mean like hustle. Yeah, I was just like pounding the pavement and just like giving out my resumes to everyone, to everything, to every restaurant, to every whatever. And you're obviously just met with so much rejection. It gets to the point where you are just like, oh my God, I am hopeless. And then I would spend my days in Starbucks or McDonald's trying to get a job and using the free Wi-Fi because I was so broke because I didn't budget. Common theme in all my podcasts, please budget and take care of your finances. When I lived in Canada, I was making $8.10 an hour, which meant I was only doing part-time, and I took home 120 Australian dollars a week. My rent was 110. I would spend $10 on food every week, which was oats and spaghetti. I put on a lot of weight. You don't have to be a fitness freak to figure out that that is not enough of anything else but oats and spaghetti and cannot be good for you. We would shop at No Frills, which was a budget Woolworths, Coles food store with these yellow bags, and that's all I could afford. And that little side note, whenever people like in Perth or Australia are like, oh my God, the government sucks, or being on the dole, like fuck the system type thing, I'm like, bro, there are places I have been where if you don't make money, you don't eat, you don't survive. I lived in Canada, which wasn't even that bad in retrospect, but like I was making $120 a week. The government is giving you for free, $700 and something a week to do nothing and while you look for a job. Do not complain. And when it got to the end of me being in Canada, I was like, oh, fuck this. I will go home and get a job at a restaurant and make $30 an hour. And that's exactly what I did. I walked to Fremantle down the road and just went and spoke to all of them. And one of them said yes. And the pay rate was $30 an hour. I was like, there you go. Australia is one of the luckiest countries in the world. So finding a job and just finding yourself in a new country, a new town, a new place is so incredibly hard. You feel and experience for the first time in your life what it actually means to be lonely. The epitome of gut-wrenching, hollow nothingness inside you that just makes you feel like you are actually on a television show where you're in a bubble and the show is made for you and you are just going insane. I remember when I lived in Melbourne, just driving around on Sundays because I had nothing to do. Obviously during the week it was all filled up with like working all the jobs and I didn't even have a spare second to breathe. And then when it got to Sunday and I really had to deal with the fact that I was actually alone there, I would just be like, what is going on? And just get in my car and just drive for hours because I had nothing else to do. And granted, I had a different mind state then. I definitely would be different now, but still. And I would just actually feel like I'm going insane. And the smallest things become the biggest things and you just don't even think about it. Like a little problem, like the dumbest issue would turn into the biggest issue and that would last for like 2.5 weeks and I would just be like frustrated in my own head. And then I would get a call from one of my friends and they would be like, no, you do this because you do this because you're ANITA. So we know why you do that and just do this instead. And you'd be like, oh. And the problem will be solved in a couple minutes. And also just because you're over there, everyone assumes that you're always doing stuff and you're always filled with friends and abundance and just doing shit. And so nobody naturally obviously checks on you as much. And so you kind of get away with being lonely as well and not being held accountable, which could make you seem more depressed. Like there's just so many random things that I would do, just like sit in my car and just eat chocolate and pizza and just the dumbest shit to fill time, which made me feel so sick and depressed because no one was like, hey, what have you been doing? Whereas if my friends would be like, why did you drive 3 hours to go eat chocolate and pizza by yourself? Like, just call us. But because you don't have anyone around you, it's not the same. And it's so weird. And it sounds like, oh, poor you type thing, but it's just the strangest thing ever. And then you do make friends. But I think the technical timing is they say, oh, fuck, I'm going to screw this up. But I think it's 8 months before you may make a friend properly-ish and then 2 years before most people start feeling like the place is their actual home. In the beginning, it can be exciting and then it's kind of you just like spin out. Like it's just an alternate reality. So then you make friends and then a lot of the times if you make friends and then you hang out with them, you kind of know that you're only just hanging out with them because you don't have anyone else. And then that makes you feel like an idiot or like you're somewhat using them too. Like you're hanging out, but it's not the same. But why would it be the same? You can't expect to have the same friendships with someone you've just met that what you have had with these people you've known for 12 years or so. But it's just that feeling of like loneliness or like, whoa, or like what is going on that just drives you to just think so weirdly and just feel like an alien in this place that nobody speaks about and everyone just thinks it's this glamorous life and all this shit and it's not necessarily. I remember trying to find a house which was hectic, a house to rent, and I was catching buses and trams and I would spend all my time just catching trams and buses around to go to house viewings and getting rejected. And I just couldn't find this place. Like, this person was waiting for me and I just didn't know because the city was so big and I just actually had no fucking idea where I was. Granted, looking back now, I know exactly where that was and it wasn't that hard, but I just didn't know, and it was freezing and I had like my snow jacket on. And then I just found a petrol station finally and just cried in the fucking like garden thingy. And I was just like, I'm sick of shit and sick of not knowing anyone and sick of not knowing anything and trying to make this work. And why am I trying to make this work? And where the fuck am I? And why am I crying in a garden bed? What is going on? Sort your shit out. But it's just that, I don't know, it's just the weirdest feeling. But then on the flip is that once, I guess, you get momentum or just the confidence and character building that you get from having to go through such hectic shit, it gets quite addictive as well, or at least the concept of going to different places and meeting new people. So that's the little like catch-22 of this, because, okay, cool, all right, say that sucked, I'm just going to go back to Perth. But I think of all the things that I learned and all the things that I did and all the people that I saw, or even when I travel long term, and it's just like when I stop in one place, I'm like, but what about all that stuff that I just learned over that like year? Imagine if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So by me staying here for a year, that's possibly ridding me of experiencing something somewhere else for a year. And then it's just this dichotomy, weird thing going on in your head of the grass is always greener, but then you're like, no, bring it back. And I've read a lot of articles on that, on people who have traveled a lot and the downside of it. And that's when like you go somewhere and you know that you can go somewhere and make new friends and start a new life, but then you kind of want the routine of having your coffee shop and your people. But then you know you could pack up and just go to Canada, or you know you could pack up and just go to Saudi Arabia, and you know that you can do that. And the knowledge that you have the freedom to make those choices to just mix and match and do whatever and create your own thing is a level of anxiety as well, because you're like, fuck, do I want to just keep jumping or do I want to dedicate myself to one solid place? Or do I want to experience all these little things, because life is about variety? So that is hectic. And then another thing that's not spoken about, which is a heavy topic if you've been involved with it, which has like people actually like coaching you through it, is when you do come back to your original hometown, especially after living abroad for a long time. Say if people go to like London for 2 to 5 years, or they move to Australia and then you go back. Yeah, I know a few people who've done this. From my experience when I came back, so I'll talk about two sides. I was a bit younger, but it still had that element to it. Like, say the Canada one, because I expected that to be more long-term, whereas the Melbourne ones, I knew I was coming back. The Canada one, there's like an element of embarrassment to it. Like it's like embarrassing, or like you feel like a failure, which no one speaks about. Like you had this life and this dream and that, and then you come back and then it's like, and then everyone's doing the same thing. And then you're like, it's super weird. And so the second thing, which is that, but people who have done it more hardcore and long term, which I've spoken to quite a few people about, is when you come back, you just don't feel like it's your home, like nothing's your home, and you feel so alienated from it, and you kind of hang out with people, but it's not the same as it was, and people have kind of moved on without you because you have taught them to live without you. So that's weird. Or they have like little personal jokes or groups or new things, and you just feel like an alien in your old group. And then you also just feel like where you are is a bit of like a ghost town as well, and you just feel like you've come back to this thing which doesn't serve you anymore. And it's just the weirdest feeling of trying to get used to that and being grateful for it, even if your time abroad was excruciatingly shit and it was painful, and all you want to do was come back. You come back and it's just super weird to come back into it. And I've actually spoken to quite a few people who have gotten depressed as like, they're just, I fucking hate this and I'm doing anything to get out of it type thing. So there's little things which come with it, and on the now I'm making it all sound very depressing, but it's not. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. And you get over these things. But this is a podcast about the shit that's not talked about when you do move countries or states. And the fact everyone is just like, oh my God, da da da. And something comes from that as well. Say if you have a friend, they're like, I'm moving to New York to do fashion. A part of them feels like that gives them not a competitive edge, but that like makes them special in a way. And so everyone assumes, oh, you're doing this. And then when you come back, that because their perception of you is this, and now you're back, them constantly asking you about it or asking you when you might go back or this, and trying to remind you of it when you're trying to settle back into your old routine, which is hard enough. It is so weird. It's so weird. And then naturally there's the depression of just having, if your holiday was good or your time away was good, is just the normal travel depression, which quite a few people get, where it's when you go back to reality, you're just like, what the fuck is this? No. And I would always get that after tour for my first few years, and sometimes I do a bit now. Maybe not as much because it's such intense work now, whereas when the groups were smaller, it was just like me going with my mates, whereas now when it's like 80 people, it's fucking hectic and I don't get to chill as much. But I remember just being so actually depressed, like just no. Because you've done all this shit, because life is about doing and being and experiencing and being around people and new experiences. And so that's what travel gives you, especially Awake Tours do music festival travel. So you add a music festival, which in itself, music, togetherness, being, bringing people together who may not know each other, and their thing that they have in common is music. So they're naturally going to get along with each other, yeah? And so that in itself is great. And then you've traveled, so everything you're doing every day is completely new. But then also the shit on tour is just out of this world, hectic, extra large, amazing. And then so you're doing everything that life is that you're meant to do in life. So you're doing experience being with all these people, and then you go straight back into a world of just same days, same shit, same dirt. And even if you do like your life, it does take a lot to adjust back to it. And you just think, no, this is not it. Or say if when I used to work in my office job and hate it, and people would be like getting angry about the dumbest stuff, or this margin's 1 centimeter too wide. And you're just like, bro, this is not what life is about. This is not it. This is not it. And you're in the freedom mentality, and it's just super depressing to just be like, you guys don't get it. You don't get that life is experience and love and doing. You don't get it. You don't know where I've been. I can't even tell you where I've been. No one gets it but me, you know? And so there's a depression that comes with that as well. So, yes. But these are all experiences. This is all amazing. I would never change anything I have ever done ever in the history of the world. Even the pain. Alrighty, so we're going to get Jolene on the phone. And the reason why we're going to get her on is because I think she falls into this topic perfectly. Basically, when she was a teenager, her family decided to move from South Africa to Perth, which, as you can imagine, when you have just, finished your schooling and have your friends and know who your crew is for the first time in your life, and then them just being like, nope, we're actually moving country, and goodbye to all of that you've just figured out all through high school, and let's go on another journey. Like, that would be a very hard thing to take on. So they came to Perth. She had to find a whole new friend base and everything, which is how I met her. After that, her family decided they wanted to go back to South Africa, which after she had put in the hard yards of getting some friends, obviously was a very hard decision to make, but she ended up staying here, which then led her to meet her partner and move to Melbourne. I'm sure, which we'll talk about today, that there are some things that she faced, which I had also faced, which everyone else who has moved had also faced, that she will be able to talk to us about. Again, this is not to deter you from doing. There is always a positive in experiences and doing, and you meet so many people, and I would never take back anything I've ever done. But We're just playing devil advocate and like looking at the flip side. Alrighty, guys. So as promised, we have Jolene on the phone. Jo, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm not bad. So I have already kind of told the people a little bit about you. I gave a background, I guess, about my travel story and what it was like to move countries and then move states. You first came from South Africa with your family. I just wanted to know, number one, how old were you and what did it feel like when your family first told you you were about to ship up your life and move to Australia?
Yep. Now I have to think back a couple of years and try to remember how I felt, but it's actually not that hard because it's a big thing and I do remember quite clearly. I was 18. So for me, that was a good time in my life to change things up because I finished high school. Whereas I have a sister who was actually in the middle of high school. And for someone like her at the time of her life, it would have been much harder. But when they told me that we were going to move countries, I was mostly excited. And I remember being excited because I knew in my heart that I always wanted something more out of life. I knew deep down that it was going to be scary, but my gut was just telling me that I should say yes and that it was something that I actually did want to do, even though it was going to be really hard. And the reasons I say that is because a lot of people do know what South Africa's like, but I lived in Johannesburg and there's a lot of crime there. You live in a lot of fear. There's not a lot of opportunity to be out of your house, to travel. It's literally, it's like, to anyone that doesn't live there, it doesn't sound real. And to someone living there, any other country is like a movie. Like that's how I describe it. Like when I moved to Australia, it was like I was living in a movie because I could actually walk outside my house or go for a jog. And in South Africa, you can't do that. It was crazy. I was like, in South Africa, there is like this big box that you live in that the rest of the world doesn't live in. It's crazy. So I knew that it was going to be good, especially because I was a high achiever in school. I always wanted more. I want to achieve my dreams. I don't just sit around, and South Africa wasn't the place where I was going to get that. Yeah. So what follows on is a big journey of growth and a lot of moving, a lot of meeting new people. But at the time before doing that, I was definitely excited to move. My sister was different in that
she was in the middle of adolescence.
and younger. So a lot of my friends in high school as well, like I would finish high school, I was going to make new friends already. So I already kind of cut ties with some of them. So I was just in a good place. It's sort of like the stars were really aligned for me to be able to go and move. But again, it was also hard. I remember crying the whole plane flight over. I remember it was 8 hours. I did cry. I cried a lot after that. So I think I'm bringing out the good things now because I've had enough time to grow and look back and go, it was definitely a good thing, but it was hard. Big change.
So how long do you think it was before Perth felt like your home to you? Like you're like, oh, this is my place.
Oh, well, at the time you think it feels like home, but when you look back, it took probably 3 years.
Yeah, they say 2
honestly,
years plus.
Okay, so I think 2 years is pretty on the money. 2 to 3 years is what I'm thinking. And it took a lot of patience. And it just takes time. It's a massive change. Like when you shift where you live, subconsciously you don't realize how much change has to happen in your mind and your body and how much you actually have to deal with. And when you move countries and you just get on with it, your body actually just adapts. Like your body is actually very good at surviving and adapting. And then it just takes a lot of time for your emotions to come through and for you to start to feel that change. You will go through a low. So you go through a low. Within the first 6 months, you will hit a low. It's happened to me. It happened to my family. 6 months, and then you stay at a low for quite a while, and then only after around 2 years, you actually start to feel like you're at home. So after 6 months, like I said, 6 months is when you hit rock bottom. I think 6 months is a good time to give when that will happen. And my parents wanted to move back because they were older, and of course, they miss their friends. Like they're not in high school, they're not getting new jobs. Like they're at a mature point in their life where you've got your established friends, you're not really looking to make new ones. So obviously without having that, and it always comes down to your friends and family. You can be anywhere on earth, but if you don't have the people that you love around you and giving you support and lifting your soul up, you will miss wherever you came from or wherever those people are. So they moved back and they gave me a choice. They said, you can move back to South Africa or you can stay in Perth. Yeah. So I knew deep down, again, I just tried to listen to my gut and what it wanted, and I said, I'm going to stay. I was really lucky in that I'd met a group of friends. So that's Anita, who I'm talking to right now, Ashley. I'd met some very key friends in my life before this happened, and that was definitely meant to be. If I hadn't met the friends that I have in Australia, I would have moved back. So I decided to stay. So I was still 18 and they left. I had no money. Was partly in university. I had a job, which I didn't really like. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't own anything. I didn't even have a bed. I didn't have anything. So for this next part of my life, after 6 months, I was going through my own emotions at the time as well, because I was missing friends from home and I'm still adjusting. So then they left. So this was probably where it was really breaking point for me. And the next year or two after that, I went through the biggest low in my life because it was so hard, but it was all worth it. That's why I went through it, because I knew it was going to be worth it, and things always come full circle. So we'll talk about this a bit later, but my parents moved to South Africa and now they've just moved back to Australia, and it's taken 5 or 6 years for things to come full circle. But this is why I put myself through it. So I ended up hiring out a room with my friends. Their names were Devon and Izzy. At the time, they actually weren't my friends. They were friends of my friends, Ashley's. But look, now they're really good friends of mine, and that was a really, really good place to stay. They were supportive of me going through all of this emotional shit. It was good to live with friends instead of people that I didn't know, because I did need support. But I did go through depression, and I openly talk about it because it was really, really hard. It was a very, very hard time in my life. I went on medication because as a last resort, I had no other way of coping with it. I coped with it for about a year until I reached a point where I just didn't know what to do. And I think the important point I'm trying to make here is when you don't have support as a young person, particularly financial support. For example, I was working jobs that I hated. I hated my jobs, but I felt this pressure, I had to do these jobs because I had no other financial support, or I had no place to stay. I had to support myself. So I put myself through stuff that, looking back now, I probably shouldn't have, but I did. And that caused so much stress on my body and on my mind that I went through this huge low, and I just moved countries as well. So not only I didn't have support, but I was in a new place. So obviously the person I am now has been shaped because of all of these things, but it was very, very hard. And it was only at the 2 to 3 year mark after all of this happened that I started to, feel like myself again. It was really hard, but it was all worth it.
Crazy.
Sorry if it's a bit depressing what I'm talking about.
No, I say this to people that's what I said in the beginning, it's not to deter them, because we would never change anything, but people just think, oh, it's glamorous, oh, you moved to Australia, good for you, it must just be beaches and happiness and party, and just do you know what it's like to be somewhere where you don't know anyone or anything? Especially, I couldn't imagine, your parents leaving. That's quite hectic, especially because you came here for them, and I get you and your sister weren't the ones who suggested that, and then they left, and you were like, wow, do I stay here?
You're saying this better than how I could say it. I forgot that that's the whole point. I moved. It sounds like you know me more than I know myself. Exactly. And the only reason I was going out and doing all these fun things was a coping mechanism. Not really, but also it was exciting. Obviously, it was freaking exciting. It was so cool, but a lot of it was part of a coping mechanism as well. Because if you go through so much stress, you just want to give up and just do stuff that makes you feel good, you know. Exactly. But also, I met amazing friends. So obviously, I've got to have a good time with these amazing friends that I met too, who are still my friends and who I love.
So I was wondering if there's anything, well, obviously traveling somewhere else changes you as a person. Is there anything in you that, I guess this is kind of a general question, because my answer is it obviously just opened up my mind to, I guess, different places, and then also the harsh reality of the hustle of trying to have friends, a job, a rental, just all this character building really makes you a stronger person. And then also being isolated so much so by myself made me realize the little things that I would do daily or weekly or monthly, or just having people around me that I'm like, okay, when I go back into my normal life back in Perth, I need to make sure that I'm doing this, this, and this, or seeing this person, because I'm depressed now, and I can see as even an outsider that I'm depressed because I haven't spoke to my friend once a week. But back at home, I'll go 4 weeks without speaking to anyone and be like, oh, I'm so depressed. It's now, so I was wondering if it has changed you as a person, or if there's anything that you've been like, but.
I feel like this is such a good question, because this has been the main theme in moving and what it has, this is the biggest thing that's changed my life, or the biggest area. And I was nodding my head the whole time you were talking, because it's the exact same for me. And I think what happens is when you move away, there is so much that gets removed from your life that you get torn down to your pure essence, and you become accountable for everything in your life. It's like all of the layers and all of the fake masks and all the distractions get pulled away, and you look at your naked life, and you can start to acknowledge all of the stuff that you fill with your life with that doesn't actually bring you joy, and what brings you joy, which might not be next to you anymore. Yeah. It's like this sudden realization. For me personally, I've really started to look inwards. So when I was with all my friends and we'd have to go out every weekend, and it's almost like a hassle sometimes, you have all these friends and you have to go out all the time, and you're like, and then you get tired from drinking and going out, and then you have to go to work, and you have no time to inward reflect on anything. You just keep going. Yeah. So when you move, at first, that's what happens. You look outwards for fun. It's a new, exciting place, but that only lasts you so long. So there's only so many restaurants you can go out to, and there's only so many new places you can see and new things to do, new people to meet, but it's all the same at the end of the day. So after some time, so this took me about a year of doing that. Now I'm in my second year living in Melbourne. This has been a very inward reflective journey where all of a sudden I just realized what was important. Being away from everything gave me the space to get new perspective on my life. So now I'm starting to reflect inwards. So I've been spending a lot of time, especially because of COVID-19. So for anyone listening to this, when we did this recording, it's during COVID-19. So now I've been cut off from going out, which has actually been a blessing, because I can't go outwards and have fun and do things to fill my life. I have to look inwards. So I've been spending so much time setting goals and really reflecting on my life, and reflecting on what I want, reflecting on how much time goes by where you do nothing. Yes. And you're so not accountable for making no change in your life. So it's given me the space to set goals and reflect and become much more proactive and really put perspective on what's important and what is not. So it's positioning me now to, like you said, I know now the things that I should be doing. So I'm now ready for when I move back and I'm with friends and I'm with family. I'm a completely different person. I know what I want, and I know how I'm going to spend my time. And it's not going to be doing fluffy things and spending it doing things I don't want or with people I don't want to, because I've been away from all that, and now I can handle it. Now I'm strong enough to do it, and I'm strong enough to ask for what I want now and to know what is going to make me happy and what is not, which is sort of the same thing that happened to you. And I'm also a much, much stronger person because being away, I don't have counsel. You don't have your friends there to check you and your life and check if your life's in check. You only have yourself, and you need to grow a voice to tell yourself how to run your life. And until you do that, your life will not go the direction you want it to. And I've finally done that, and I am now only accountable for me. And I am the strength, and I am the person that is going to direct my life now. And so being away from everything, that's what's happened, and I feel like a completely different person, and it's been a blessing.
No, very, very good answer. And that's exactly how I feel as well. I think two things you said there, like with your COVID time and about you being accountable for time, that's a realization that I had as well. Well, when I travel, when I was away, but more so now because of COVID, like I'd be like, oh, I work and I do this and work so hard, blah, blah, blah. But because I'm on the road so much, and like say if I'm touring for 10 months, I think I'm busy. No, I think I'm productive, but I'm really just like busy filling up with random shit. And now that I've been in my house, I'm like, your screen time on your phone is 7 hours because it's not like I don't have the distractions to fill in the time. I'm just with the core of what it is that I actually do with my time. And then I'm like, I would never have known this had I not got rid of everything. I would be on the road, be like, oh, I feel here. I don't really have a feel in the moment. I feel like my head's everywhere. It's like, yeah, because during the day you do this, like you have no structure. And now, which I guess, you've experienced too, once you just strip away everything and it's like you on a blank canvas, you're like, true, this is what I actually do, not what I think I do. Yeah. And then the second thing that you said about not having time for people type thing as well, that's exactly what happened to me. And I probably went like too far into it. Like, because when I lived in Melbourne, I obviously I had a few friends and I was the same as you. It was just friends but acquaintances, but I felt like an idiot when I'd hang out with them sometimes because I knew I was just hanging out with them to hang out with someone, and I felt stupid. And so but because obviously there's people who I don't really gel with even there. Because I was the tourist, I could just be like, nah, I don't want to hang out with you. And that was like blunt. Whereas you don't realize this maybe back in Perth that you hang around with just because you think you should. When I came back, people were like, oh, I'll go see this person. I'm like, no, I'm not going. They're like, we have to. It's
That's
our friend.
amazing.
But I was just blunt. I probably went too far. And I'm like, and I literally had to say to someone once, I was like, I'm sorry. I'm so used to just not hanging around people who I just can't be bothered with. So I'm nah. And like gradually I learned how to be a bit nicer about that. But it's definitely.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, because you're like,
That's
nah,
funny.
man, I don't even have enough time to see my family, so why am I going to do that just to be polite? No.
Yeah, exactly. You just, you learn to just cut the corners, cut the shit. You just learn to, get to do all that. Oh, people appreciate honesty anyway, even if it's nice or not.
Just blunt.
That's hilarious. No, the same for me, honestly. Like, if I do like go out and then halfway through the night, I'll be like, why am I here? I could just be like, doing something I want to do. But anyway.
Anyway, so what advice would you give anyone who is looking to or about to move states or countries who, either positive, negative, or just what do you wish someone had told you?
Yeah. I always feel like giving advice it's a hard thing for me, even to myself or other people, but do it for the right reasons. Don't be scared about things not working out, like no expectations, right? Like you're going to go there and you're going to become a completely different person. You can't predict what's going to happen or who you're going to become or what lessons you're going to learn. Yeah. But if your life sends you on a path or gives you an opportunity where you could move somewhere, don't take the decision out of fear or fate. If it's scary and it's good, but it's going to bring change in your life and it's going to make you grow, then do it.
Definitely. And that's what I said in the beginning. I was like, this interview is purposely talking about the negatives, but I'd never regret, nor would I ever say don't do it. If all the reasons, or if you just say, oh, maybe I just want to move here just because, then do it. If you're not like affecting anyone or you're not really putting yourself out too much and you're just kind of bored and you just kind of want to see what something's like and it's not really going to affect you, and it's like, why not? Because you learn so much. And even if it is an absolutely horrible experience and you fall on your ass and you just like, oh my God, that was hell. There's no money figure you can put on the, like, who you become, like, so much stronger. Even just the rejection of rentals or rejection of jobs or situations where you just like are so embarrassed in the moment, but you learn to hold yourself differently as a human where like you can't really, by not doing or putting yourself in these really harsh environments, like and
it makes you more compassionate, doesn't it? Like you just realize what other people go through, and you realize how easy your life has been in certain areas and things you've taken for granted, and you don't realize that until you put yourself in uncomfortable positions and new ways of thinking. Exactly.
No, I think you appreciate stuff more too, because I think the first time I moved to Melbourne, I was just so bored with Perth, and most people know I just like did not want to live here. I was like, I fucking hate this place. I've lived here so long. Anyway,
really?
It's a wonderful place though. But then I moved to Melbourne, and then I'm just like in actual traffic for the first time. I'm like, for fuck's sake, like moving from the city to South Yarra, it was like a 20-minute drive. It took me like an hour and 40 minutes.
It takes me an hour to get away from where I live, just out of Capel Street.
Like just hectic. And there's so many little things, or like living in Canada and like making $8 an hour and just about, are you for real? Or just being freezing like in Perth. I'm like, I'm cold, but in Canada I was actually cold.
You were freezing. I'm I have like a skin rash. I'm living here because I never take off my long pants. My son hasn't seen the skin. I mean my skin hasn't seen the sun. Yes. Oh my gosh. But what you're saying, appreciation, that's fantastic. Like I think I'm looking at Perth in a bit of a different light too. Like things that you kind of take for granted. I think that's the best point for that question. Yeah. Appreciation.
Definitely. A couple more questions, but I was wondering, what is the greatest thing in your opinion about traveling? And that can just be traveling in general. I know you've come to EDC with us. We've gone to Bali and you've had lots of little trips. So just, the greatest thing about travel.
Man, Bali was amazing. Oh my gosh. I love that place. That was really cool. I think traveling takes you out of your box. Like most people don't realize that everyone lives in a box because you don't know what's out there until you experience it. Like that's that. It makes you realize there's more to life. Also, another thing is like people don't realize we actually live in the best time to live on this planet. Like
Yeah.
we'll live in the time, after wars and, when technologies really come around. But I feel like in the future, everyone's going to have access to everything, and we live in the sweet spot before that happens. So we live in the best time, and really people should take the opportunity to experience the world and go see the world. There's so much to see, so much to learn, and it's such a privilege.
Yeah.
And every experience that you have in your life, whether good or bad, makes you grow, and you'll look back and you'll always appreciate it. And there's no excuse. Like no matter how much money you earn, I feel like if you put in the effort, you can save the money and you can go travel. I know it might be hard, but I think it's something everyone should prioritize and do in their life. Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
The thing with money is funny because like everyone on a given year, you just don't save. Like you just wouldn't just have 30 grand. But if you're like, I'm going to Europe next year, suddenly you just have $30,000 to go. And you're like, why couldn't I have done that every other year of my life? What have I been doing? No matter
Exactly.
Yeah. No matter what amount of money you make, I've found you always find a way to spend it. Like no matter what wage you are, you learn to live with it somehow.
100%. That's something else that's happened to me, like moving to Melbourne. I'm earning the biggest salary I've ever earned. Like, oh my gosh, I should be so grateful. And I'm not saving anything. So all of a sudden now with COVID-19, I'm like, I've actually, I've re-looked at my life and I've re-looked at my finances and everything and setting goals and all this stuff I keep saying that people should start, that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
That part of that has been my finances, and all of a sudden I've got savings, and it's just been a month of me doing this.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, every single person who's come on this podcast has mentioned finances, and that's the one thing that I drew to people. I'm like, money doesn't mean anything, and if you're looking for it to make you happy with the number, it won't, but you should completely control and look at your money. Like even same with me, when I was in Melbourne, I was making fucking like 5 times as much as what I would make here, and I still didn't have a cent. And now, and like when I was on awake tours, when I was paying myself only $400 a week, when I was like, no, I'm going to figure out where my money is going, every cent, and not just but every cent, and I would have like nearly a couple $100 left over every week. And I'm like, how? But it's just because you're actually looking at it and not being ignorant.
Oh my gosh, you make me laugh.
My final question to you is, what advice would you give to your younger self, be that about life, travel, or just anything, if you're looking at young, little, innocent Jojo right now?
I think advice is one of those things that's tricky because we don't have someone giving us advice in life, right? We have no manual. We go through life with no answers to our questions, and that's how we grow, and that's how we become who we become. So I find it's a hard question for me to answer, but I would say I think if I was looking at my younger self, for people that are listening and don't know me, I'm a perfectionistic person. I have very high standards for myself. I beat myself up about stupid things. So I think just learning to laugh a bit more and not take life so seriously, do more with your life. Whether you are successful or not, it doesn't matter. Just set goals, be proactive, just do more, learn more. Understand that all things, including the bad, have a purpose in shaping you. So when you're going through bad stuff, know that it will be okay and you'll come out on the other end a bigger person. And there's always a bigger purpose. The universe has a bigger purpose to putting things in your life that you don't understand at the time until those things are done. And then you get clarity and you realize why those things happen to you. So just be patient. Everything's going to be fine. Fail some more. That is the biggest sign of success in your life, the more times you have failed at trying things. And the final thing I want to say was, you really have the power to change your life. Ask for support when you need to, and constantly challenge what you're working on and doing it. So for example, when I was younger, I used to work jobs where I was really, really unhappy, that jobs that sent me into depression. And I had the power to change those things, but I felt helpless. I didn't ask for the support I needed, and I didn't get up off my own 2 feet and just do it. I was a bit too scared. So I feel like you're always acknowledging that we have the power to make change in our life.
Yes.
But also be patient. Don't be so hard on ourselves. Be patient with the process, and you'll always be stronger after all things. I don't know if that's good advice.
No, that's
that anyone else needs.
No, you literally just did a TED talk, amazing, and bit of advice, which got 12 billion views on YouTube. Of course, no. That was perfect. No, I agreed with everything that you say, and I think like doing more and just doing. People get so scared because of failure, and they just think if they're not number one, or if it's not in their mind going to work out the way that they think that it should, then they just don't, and they just don't know. But it's not in getting the thing that is the success. It's about becoming the person who gets to do the thing and the things that you have to do to become the person to be able to get to that end goal. So even if you do fail, like it's just it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't, because there's no failure in it. And as you said, it's the biggest sign of success. Otherwise, like, what do you do? If you're like, oh, I want to go here, I want to try for a new job, I hate my, like, oh, I'm not going, nah. That stops. That story stops there. Like, okay, the end. And people hate their life, but it's like, well, you already know, like, what you're doing now, you know what you get from that. So you know what you're going to get for the rest of the future if you keep doing that. So why wouldn't you try?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that was a great analogy. That was great. You know what you know now, and until you do something new, what you know is going to stay the same.
Exactly. Spitting some gospel on this fine afternoon. No.
You need to play some church music at the end, like.
Some praise the Lord and motivational Fridays up here.
I'll just get on the piano and be like.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know Jolene, she is, I'll put a photo of her. Number one, she's stunning. Number two, she's good at everything. I have never met anyone who is fucking good at everything. Drawing, painting, piano, singing, like anything you like. And she's hot as fuck. So I was gonna say, she's not single though, but there will be a photo of her.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to have to say it.
Your DMs, message request file getting.
Oh, and I've just completely dropped off Instagram too. It's like someone thought I died. They were like they messaged.
R.I.P.
Like, are you? They're like, are you okay?
Condolences to the family. Like what?
Like I did. I went through a metaphorical death, and now I've come back to life. Like that's what I feel like.
Yeah. No, you have to.
Yeah. I feel like I tend to be a bit more critical and a bit more negative about stuff than a lot of other people. So hopefully it's not like my answers aren't all like, they're quite critical and quite cynical.
No, it was made to be that way. Of that. No, definitely.
Okay, cool.
Alrighty, Joe, thank you so much for your time today. I think you're a perfect candidate. As mentioned, this was an intended podcast for the negatives, I guess, and different sides that aren't talked about when moving. We could easily do another 10 hours on all the beautiful things and why you should do it, and you always should. So thank you so much for being so vulnerable and for sharing your side of the story, and we cannot wait till we get to see you again when these borders open up.
Same. Oh, thank you. Same. Oh, thanks, Anita.
All right. I'll see you soon. All right, bye.